After a fairly long stint of playing games with guns, I felt like I needed to step back into something a bit more fantastical. I'm talking swords, magic, dark sorcery, elves and orcs. Everyone in some capacity knows of Middle-earth, either through Tolkien's books, the Peter Jackson film series, or some bargain bin attempt at capitalising in on one of its most iconic characters. I'm not the biggest fan of the source material, although I will say the attack on Helm's Deep is a cinematic marvel, so Shadow of Mordor is something of an odd choice for me. I had slept on it back in 2017, where I never progressed further than the first few hours or so. Gondor Watchman Talion is a husband and a dad, so immediately this resonated with me. Somehow Palpatine Somehow Sauron returns with his Black Hand cronies doing the bidding. They wipe out the guard, slaying Talion, his wife and son in the process. Somehow Talion returns, albeit attached to an elven wraith. The wraith, Celebrimbor, brings with him a bunch of video gamey tropes, such as skill trees, infinite respawning and a bow and arrow, because this is the era of gaming when bow and arrows were the in thing. Celebrimbor was one of the ring creators, you know, that ring, but used it to betray Sauron. Sauron wasn't particularly happy with this and did to Celebrimbor what the Black Hand would later do to Talion. United and bound by the same revenge, the Ranger and the Wraith impart their knowledge and quest to bring down the dark forces in Mordor and Sauron's army of Uruk warriors. Talion's combat is satisfying and only gets more enjoyable as you unlock more abilities. It's not a particularly nuanced fighting style. It's fair to say that it probably borrows from the Arkham series in that you should time your counters correctly and rack up combos to unleash more powerful attacks and brutal finishes. A bit of coherency in your button bashing goes a long way, especially against large crowds. Celebrimbor brings his own moves too, including a powerful stun punch, a speed boost to Talion's sprint, and Shadow Strike, which allows you to just teleport to an enemy and slice them down there and then. Pin enemies' feet to the ground with an arrow, smash through shields with a shoulder barge, or command orcs to do your dirty work. Seriously, Celebrimbor puts the terror into interrogation. As he grips an orc's head, thunders, "Suffer me now!" and takes control of their psyche to gain intel or to convert the soldier to fight for your side. It's a decent collection of abilities that fulfill that power fantasy. Traversal is heavily inspired by Assassin's Creed. It's nowhere near as fluent, probably a bit too snappy, and the landscapes are nowhere near as dense, but it's enough to be able to use it to your advantage whether you're running away or planning a stealth attack. It's a fun playground to experiment in, and also pretty rewarding when you turn the tables on your enemies using the environment. And you can put all these skills together within the Nemesis system. Naturally, there is a hierarchy amongst Sauron's army, and each captain has unique traits, strengths, weaknesses and names. Tackling orcs can be done in a multitude of ways. You can hunt them down in their strongholds and exploit their weaknesses. You can infiltrate a power struggle and make sure one side comes out on top, or you may just bump into them whilst milling around the land. Defeating a captain will earn Talion a rune that buffs his dagger, sword or elven bow. As Talion is caught between the land of the living and the dead, he will always be resurrected if he is slaughtered, whilst the captain's power levels will increase when time passes and when they are victorious in battle. And orcs remember Talion and remark on their previous meetings. Upper ranks may use bodyguards and gain more strengths and immunities to attacks as they increase in power, and like Talion they may even cheat death altogether. The Nemesis system works reliably in creating unique encounters and allows you to use the game's entire toy box. This does result in a few issues, however. I feel like the story and the Nemesis system don't exactly gel with each other, like they were shoehorned to fit together. The story itself is fine, although I don't think it gets up to steam. Missions are a tad generic and pacing is a bit funny. There's definitely a slump as you unlock the second region about halfway through, and the boss fights are dreadful. Fights with powerful orc captains were way more cathartic and engaging than any boss in the game. It also suffers from a mild case of Ubiitis, with its climb tower to unfog map and collect 50 of these things and a bajillion different icons. Thankfully both maps are quite small, the world loads quickly after fast travelling, and a lot of the side missions and collectibles are optional. This means it's not actually too long and is only as bloated as you allow it to be. But overall, I think it's a pretty good game, and the Nemesis system is definitely a mechanic that needs to be experienced. The voice acting and animation has stood the test of time. Believe me, there are more up-to-date games that don't look nearly as good as this. I enjoyed the conversations with Celebrimbor. Torvin was great and should have appeared more, and the orcs themselves stole the show at every opportunity they got. Overhearing them banter with each other or throwing shade at the player when they catch sight of Talion injected a burst of personality. Shadow of Mordor isn't canon. A lot of the lore is made up especially for the game. Aside from a few references here and there, it didn't do much to tune me into that Tolkien magic. As a casual Lord of the Rings fan, you'll recognise Gollum early on to tell you that this is adjacent to the series, and then it'll continue as an action brawler with only vague hints to that universe as you progress. And that's not too much of a bad thing, since Tolkien's books are so deeply steeped in their own lore as it is, and Shadow of Mordor's strength is in the gameplay. It's an approachable, easily playable entry that uses a framework you may already be familiar with.